Recently, I was asked, what is the best work you have ever read? And to be honest, that is a difficult question to answer. Is it a work that I find myself thinking about months after reading? Is it a book that gave me a passion for reading and writing? Or maybe a poem that I just enjoyed? It is a tough question, a question that I often find myself changing my answer to. If I really had to choose, it would probably be The Enigma of Amigara Fault, written and illustrated by Junji Ito. It is a little unorthodox to talk about a manga instead of a poem or a book, but no other work has shook me to my core than the wondrous writings and illustrations that Junji Ito provides in his stories. His writings and illustrations go hand in hand to provide a haunting experience, making the reader consciously choose to turn each page to see what happens next, to see what horrors await on the next page. The Enigma of Amigara Fault is a short story about an earthquake that hits Japan, revealing a fault line in the mountain of Amigara. The earthquake splits the mountain and reveals multiple human-shaped holes that have no observed end, and that is when the horror starts. You, as the reader, know that the main character is doomed from the start when people start entering the holes. You, as the reader, are aware of the fact that there are no supernatural forces making the people enter the holes. The true culprit is compulsion, or more specifically, Call of the Void. If you've ever stood on an edge of a building or a staircase, you might have had the thought of jumping, even if you are not suicidal. That is Call of the Void. It's an impulse or urge to hurl yourself into the void, into death. An urge that is not actually attached to suicidal thoughts and is more common than one may realize. The people in The Enigma of Amigara Fault, who are entering the holes, don't want to enter the holes. They don't want to die, but the yearning desire to enter the hole overcomes them. The hole that was specifically made for them. This compulsion, the innate human instincts of curiosity and destruction, the unknown within the depths of the holes, this is the difference between fear and horror. To put it simply, fear is knowing that something is chasing after you. Terror is seeing it charging at you, and horror is realizing that your feet are stuck to the floor. There is no avoiding human psychology. There is no escape from one's mind. Mix that in with Junji Ito's illustrations and you have a truly haunting story. The visuals presented in The Enigma of Amigara Fault enhance the story by using texture to render something that would normally be impossible and unimaginably disgusting in such visceral detail that it can almost be felt and experienced. Most of the horror is found in the turning of the pages, with the most grotesque imagery just a page away. It is up to the reader to continue and finish the story, and that is what Junji Ito counts on. Human curiosity. It's the curiosity, fear of loneliness, the feeling of emptiness, the overwhelming feeling of being complete that make the story much more real to the reader. This is because the main character is a blank slate. The main protagonist, Awaki, doesn't have a character. The story follows him, but there are no defining features of his character. He's basic, and that was kind of the point. Awaki is like the nameless boy in The Onceler from Dr. Seuss's The Lorax. The book, not the movie. He is a character who could be anyone. He's no one specific because anyone can put themselves into his position, which somehow makes the story so much more impactful. Junji Ito not only draws a terrifying picture, but he also writes a horrific story. The Enigma of Amigara Fault is not a difficult read. The language is not too overly complicated or detailed. Because it is illustrated, any impactful statements are said instead of shown. This somehow works in Junji Ito's favor, as readers often quote lines from this story. This hole was made for me. This is my hole. While alone, it seems that there is nothing special about those quotes, but once you read them with the visual imagery and contextual fear that the human psyche can bring, it can really enhance the experience. While The Enigma of Amigara Fault is a short story, and while it is not one of Junji Ito's stronger works, it has resonated in me more than any other story has before. The fear that comes from the visuals and the human mind somehow make this a terrifying and engaging story to read, and I would recommend anyone who loves horror stories to read it. Sometimes it's not the length of the work or the presence of a supernatural or unknown source. Sometimes true horror comes from the human mind, and that is the most horrific thing of all.